I can tell when a lot of y'all get your hit pieces and your think pieces about consciously from Twitter because they always come half-baked.
Hey, my name is CJ, and this is my message to Conscious Leap. I'm not these other black liberals that you're arguing with on the internet. I don't know who you think you playing with, but I'm not the one. And you better recognize, because you don't know how CJ gets down. To say that I have a simplistic view of politics is ludicrous, because this lets me know that you do not know how CJ gets down. I'm not even finna get into it because I've made so many videos about the stuff that I do inside and outside of the app.
In 2019, you was in middle school. I like the energy. Hope you keep that fire and keep that energy, but it's misdirected. You make a lot of videos beefing with other leftists or other black liberals. A lot of those videos, I see a lot of the energy from that. Right now we have a common enemy that is trying to take away the political, social, economic righteousness and sovereignty from black people. Our energy should be directed towards that.
What the hell are you? I'm a decolonial Marxist that's operating off an Afropessimist lens.
Oh shit, here we go again.
But he say, your politics is incompatible, and then decided to give me an incompatible theory that he identifies as.
Our politics are in no way simplistic whatsoever. I'm a decolonial Marxist that's operating off an Afropessimist lens. I'm a decolonial Marxist that's operating off an Afropessimist lens. We can see here that this view of the world that I'm operating off of is not simple in whatsoever.
He said it many times. You must don't know about me. You must don't know about CJ. Behind me are a multiplicity of college policy plaques, where not only was I a top-ranked debater in my career, not only did I finish as a Hall of Fame debater for the decade, I spoke about and debated about Marxism, decolonization, Afropessimism, black feminism, capitalism, all these different isms and all these different things. So the fact that he felt like, I ain't know him, you don't know who you're dealing with. You don't know who you're dealing with, nephew. So now I'm gotta show you what it is, man. And to be real, I do identify a lot of my young self in you, and that's the reason why I'm giving you the time of the day. I hope that I'm able to add gasoline to that fire that's already lit up under your ass, because I do admire the grit. I admire the energy, but you picked the wrong one this time. So I'm hoping that this respectful belt to ass on theory and on pragmatism is able to, spur a great conversation. I think that there is a lot of rich points that's being made, and I actually think you're a smart individual that's going to accomplish a lot of things in life. I just think we got to push you down the line of theory and recognize that when you sit at a university, an institution that's built on white supremacy, while trying to point your finger down at other people that you think is engaging in white supremacy, the contradiction, baby, wrote itself. My question is, how much do you think sitting on TikTok does? A lot of people try to build platforms out of animosity and resentment of other content creators. What I tell you is that audiences are not sustainable that way. When you start to treat your audience and once you start to train your audience, they become like piranhas. You incentivize, and it becomes incentivized to engage in this leftist cannibalism. Decolonial Marxists through an Afro-pessimist framework. Let me start here, man. What this young whippersnapper arguing about, it sounds radical, but it's really just a kind of comfort. It's a kind of comfort that allows for him to throw a whole bunch of buzzwords in because it makes him feel good. And I remember being there when I was young, man. Theory gave me the ability to say what I mean and mean what I say. So I acknowledge how liberating it is to throw around some of these academic terms, but at some point it becomes jargon or it becomes mere theory without praxis. They love to show y'all pictures of me being with people like Joe Biden, but they don't show y'all them pictures of me being with Michael Africa Jr. or perhaps his son. He's built a worldview where he never has to risk nothing. College policy debate, we always ask people what the alternative was and hoping that the alternative wasn't mere rejection, because their rejection doesn't necessarily give us something to build on. If every system is too corrupt to touch, then you never have to do the hard work of organizing in it. That's not revolution. That's retreat. He keep on saying our platform designed this while talking to Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. No, I platformed accountability. She don't take APAC money. Like, I'm not trying to defend that at all, but I think it's worth throwing out that she don't take APAC money. Would I debate her about some of the public statements she said about Israel defense? Definitely. The The conversation happened with Jasmine Crockett because Texas Republicans were trying to erase 5 district black seats off the map. That's where I'm from, Bryan, Texas. Now living in Houston, Texas. I want to put the person in power in front of people losing theirs. Asking hard questions on the record is an endorsement, is exposure. He likes to talk engagement equals contamination. But the phone he records on, the Wi-Fi he uses, the app he posts through, all built by the same white supremacist system he claims to reject. There's no clean air to breathe here. The fight is inside the smog, inside the pollution. You can't escape the system by pretending you don't have to live in it. You resist it from within. My work isn't built on theory. It's built on experience. It's built on actual praxis and pragmatic things that I've been building on. My parents didn't have political slogans. They had eviction notices. They had indictments. They were trying to survive addiction and poverty. I didn't grow up in the movement. I make content in hopes that every first generation college student can see themselves in me and thinking and hoping that even if your parents or your community comes from a pathological background where people always already assume you're a criminal gonna do the worst shit, that you can use education as a motor vehicle to liberate themselves, or education as a motor vehicle to experience mobility. A lot like you.
Growing up, my parents and my siblings always taught me about the great leaders such as Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, Rosa Parks, James Baldwin, etc., etc. But it wasn't until the 2010s in which I started to question the colonial state that we live in, which is known as the United States of America, after I saw the repeated unalivings of people who look like me by law enforcement.
See, a lot of y'all don't know this, but I actually was a professor. I taught courses at universities in Missouri like the one CJ goes to. From Missouri to Oklahoma, every single one of these universities was made possible through the land grant. From Missouri to Oklahoma, where me and this young man, where he's going to college now, where I went to college, these universities were made possible through land theft of indigenous property. The lessons I learned from power came from seeing how it decides who eats, who works, who goes to jail. That's why I talk to people in power, not because I believe in them, but because I believe in my community's right to confront them. CJ calls himself a decolonial Marxist through an Afropessimist lens. That sounds good online, but those that actually know theory, because you don't know I do, that just sounds like a hodgepodge contradiction. Those frameworks contradict each other. They do not fit. They are incompatible. Marxism says that the world can be changed. Afropessimism says the world itself is anti-black and cannot be saved. You can't mix those and get clarity. You can't get slogans that sound deep but lead to nowhere. I don't believe in purity politics, nor do I believe in totalizing strategies of rejection. I live in an anti-black world and I gotta figure out how to navigate this anti-black world. I don't get to sit in the house and cry and say, if I step a toe outside of my porch, outside of my front door, I'm gonna deal with anti-blackness. I can't touch that. I'm gonna stay in the house. I believe pressure does. I don't believe purity wins anything. I believe pressure does. I sat in rooms in the White House, not because I admire the people there, but because that's where the decisions get made. The old folks down here in Texas, man, some of them believe that if you ain't at the table, you getting ate. If you ain't at the table, you're getting served at the table. And we can grapple with that. But that's a perspective that the people have, and we gotta sit with that. That meeting led to Rolling Stone publishing my critique of American policy in Palestine, which led to partnerships with Al Jazeera and others that's doing work. That's called leverage, youngster. Learn about it. You don't have to like the people in the room to be able to use it. That's the reason why you have people like Marcus Garvey literally meeting with white supremacists, the KKK, because he felt that, hey, I don't want y'all dealing with me. Y'all don't want to deal with me. How can we come together and deal with this common goal that we have right here? Literally, a Pan-African, Marcus Garvey, engaged with white supremacists of the KKK. You'd be being disingenuous if you said that was an endorsement of it. You would be disingenuous. The same way you're trying to dictate the intent that I had with Jasmine Crockett. The truth is, CJ politics sound like a sermon for people who don't plan to act. It's a theory for an audience, not a movement. It lets you stay perfect and powerless. Meanwhile, the rest of us are in the mud, trying to build something that keeps black folks alive, working on policy, teaching, organizing, showing up. So when he says I'm too close to power, what he's really saying is I'm too close to reality. The world doesn't get better because we shout from the outside. It changes when we learn to confront it, expose it, piece by piece, rewire it from within. I think that there is important conversation to be had about, can you dismantle the master's house with the master's tools? Can you tear the system down from the inside or the outside? I think that's an important conversation to have. And I think that outside of those theoretical framings about, reform and revolution, we still got to deal with the real world. I think that a lot of theoretical arguments that is made by a decolonial framework or by a Marxist framework or by an Afro-pessimist framework can be agreed on, but just like Dr. Frank Wilson got to show up and pay his bills, I got to show up and pay mine as well. Just like your favorite scholar in decolonization that's employed by an institution where they go get publications by other institutions, all structured by white supremacist violence, is that. Even something too, when you claim to be an Afro-pessimist, and then you using all these framings to put black last, that is literally what Afro-pessimists critique. If you go to Google and you type in Afro-pessimism, junior partners, you will see there is multiplicity of Afro-pessimist critiques of not only Marx, saying that the black position is one that is done by accumulation and fungibility in the way that you talk about exploitation and alien, that they ain't for black people. That's the reason why we have Afro-pessimism. Even decolonization. We understand there are many different ways that Afro-pessimist has a tension with a lot of that decol stuff. But he tried to Pepsi purity test me and be like, and said, I know you wouldn't do this because you wouldn't have Mike Johnson on your platform. Not only does it show you that this is a bad metaphor, Mike Johnson wasn't elected by black folks in the black part of Louisiana. Jasmine Crockett was elected by black folks here in Texas. We also know that in terms of confrontational politics, I would also still take the opportunity to confront Mike Johnson, especially if I get to ask him and confront him about everything I disagree with. That's the difference between me and him. That's the difference between me and a lot of y'all. I would never allow for the potentiality for a criticism to stop me from acting. I would never allow for the potentiality for me to be misinterpreted for me to stop the act. A lot of y'all substitute perceptions because you care more about the perception than you do acting in this reality that we live in. And that's how I know we just different. We just built different. But I'm hoping that I can ease you on the way down, man, because this video is not about me punching down on a young 19-year-old that's still in college or a young 20-year-old that's still in college. This is a video about me trying to create important dialogue with a young black man that also lives here in America, where we try to illustrate what important dialogue look like, especially when it comes to this whole theory. Because anybody can throw around a whole bunch of words, but in debate, we start to get into how do you develop an argument and how we deal with the incompatibility of said theories. But we know that this contradiction of being black in an anti-black world is something that you should have already grappled with when it comes to Afro-pessimism. That's the reason why I'm kind of iffy when you say something about Afro-pessimist or Afro-pessimist framework. Afro-pessimism talks about celebrating social life within social death. We know that within Afro-pessimism, can we get a clip real fast that gives us a quick frame of Afro-pessimism?
Orlando Patterson first defined social death as the condition of the slave, cut off from kinship, rights, and recognition, alive but socially null. Frank Wilderson expands this, arguing that blackness itself inherits that position. For him, anti-blackness isn't a failure of society. It's what makes society possible. Jared Sexton pushes further, showing how this structure outlives slavery. Social life feeds on social death. Black existence sustains the world, but the world cannot return that recognition.
Within the Afro-pessimist framing, it says that black people live in a habitual state of social death. We have to figure out a way to go to the undercommons to create conversations and create relationships with ourselves that is not amongst the surveillance of the white man or a master. You know what I'm saying? And that's something we got to sit into. Right now in Texas, and like throughout the country, black people are losing access to education. There's one party that wants us to have access to education. There is another party that don't want us to have access to education. What I am saying is that though there are many similarities amongst Democrats and Republicans, there's also some differences. Those differences are usually the difference between your grandma getting affordable insulin and not. The difference between Republicans and Democrats sometimes can be, hey, is your auntie and your sister and them criminalized for going to get reproductive freedom? I don't think there is a difference between international relations when it comes to Democrats and Republicans. They all are imperial. They love to move for capitalist interests. But domestically, they got some differences. Are both of them giving me flavors of fascism? Yes, but like I told y'all during the election, politics in America is always about choosing your flavor of fascism that you decide is going to be more digestible. Whether you decide or you don't decide, you're going to get some fascism. Whether you vote in the election or don't vote in the election, what happens in the election is still going to impact you. I used to be a lot like CJ when I was young. As a matter of fact, I had the opportunity to vote for Barack Obama the second time, but I was so radical in thinking that any participation in a system of white supremacy is a perpetuation of white supremacy, therefore I should not act. I didn't vote in none of those elections. It wasn't until I was slapped with the reality of other black and brown students that had saved all their money in grad school to go home for Thanksgiving, go home for Christmas, and they were grappling with not being able to go home because they scared that all the money and time they've been able to pour in and getting this degree would be held and thrown out because they can't get back into the country. That did something to my brain. When I started sitting there and I was thinking about all the undocumented students that I went to school with from K through 12 all the way to my university, I sat there and looked at the fear they had in their eyes. And I thought, how can I say I'm against oppression? And how can I say I advocate for the people if I have these egotistical ways of engaging the system that says that any 1% chance of white supremacy, man, I ain't rocking with it. That impacted a lot of things. Now, granted, I live in Oklahoma. All the Oklahoma electoral college votes went to Donald Trump, but it doesn't negate the reality that the election brought. And that's the reason why since then I've been advocating people to vote. The reason why Donald Trump called down here to Texas to try to make sure those 5 Senate seats was given to Republicans is to make sure that when we go out to vote, not only does it disincentivize and discourage black folks and Mexican folks here in the state to vote, that it solidifies, sustains white supremacist power throughout the electorate here in Texas. And even if we're able to acknowledge that there are white supremacy within the Democratic Party, when you think about the district that Jasmine Crockett represents, the black folks that put her in that position, I think that you're smoking dope and dog food, or you're saying that these black people put her in that position because of white supremacy. And I think that that's when you start to engage in some of that paternalistic elitism that we start to get into. A lot of black people, especially, I don't know CJ, you know what I'm saying? I'm from St. Louis, you know what I'm saying? I know he played a little soccer, but I don't know him. But I do know that there are a lot of people that's coded like CJ that come into their blackness through theory. I know we have a video of you saying that you came to leftist theory through TikTok. I was already an advocate in a community and a great debater that was already whooping ass about theory before TikTok was even made. When you was a teenager, I was already doing communal work. I was already putting my body on the line to make sure individuals get taken off of death row with my platform. And before I had my platform, I was already helping to raise money for people to get around eviction notices. I already raising money for people to get out of war-torn areas. I already raising money for bond. These are things that I use my platform for, and these are things that I was doing before I had a platform. I am somebody that taught at a Title I school. 9th and 10th grade English for my entire class was filled with black and brown students. And I had the honor and the responsibility of trying to teach them English. Education as elevation means how does your theory and perspective come accessible to everyday people? And when you watch the video from him, we're going to see how accessible that was. I don't think it'll be accessible in South Dallas. I don't think it'll be accessible in anywhere in St. Louis. He acts like engagement itself is a compromise. Endorsement, it's not engagement. Engagement does not equal endorsement.